Welcome to another episode of Rose Resource Room. Today, I have a very special guest who I'm so excited to be connected to. Thank you so much for being on our show. Please introduce yourself to us.
I am so excited, Ro, to be with you. My first name is LaNissir, and my last name is James. It's a tough name to say. Once you got it, you got it. And when you don't, you're like, what? So I'm LaNissir James, and I bring you greetings all the way from Southern Maryland. So I'm excited to be on the
Yay.
show with you.
Thank you. So tell me about yourself. I don't want any titles, not the mom, not the wife, none of those. Tell me about you, the woman.
Oh my goodness. So I'm the person who is the joyful mother of children. Literally, my favorite verse is, He maketh the barren woman to keep house and to be a joyful mother of children. Praise ye the Lord. And I was a woman who was barren, spent most of my time crying as Hannah and, begging the Lord. My husband and I had been married for several years and we couldn't have any children. And I was, busy working outside the home. I shouldn't say outside the home because I ran a business from home.
Right.
And then I had the first child. And I was so excited. Like, her nickname is Star. We were like, we're going to be one and done. And so I went from really focused on myself to truly thrilled about the Lord had answered my prayer. And
Mm.
so being the joyful mother is who I am. I wrote a book called Mom's Manual, and it's centered
Ooh,
around helping moms. Like, everybody has gifts. God gives everybody
yeah.
gifts. And so my gift is loving on babies. Just, every time I turn around, I was pregnant. In fact, I spend more time in my life pregnant than unpregnant.
Let's
And
turn it around.
this is probably the longest I've been unpregnant in a really, really long time, like 2 decades. So,
Wow.
but I take good care of LaNissir. Like, self-care is a part of who I am, and
Mm.
I love that. And so I live this split life. When you see me, I have 7 kids, by the way. Okay.
Right.
My oldest is 26, my youngest is 8. So I live in both worlds. So when you see me with my youngest daughter, I'm so excited to being a mom at an advanced maternal age. I'm going to give you a pretty name, at the advanced maternal age of having a baby, that people think that's my only child. Oh, is this your first?
Um,
I say not quite.
not, not quite. I love it.
Not quite. And Layla says, that's my youngest daughter. She says, my help has help, So I just go from one brother to sister to the other. And my
Um,
oldest is 26. And so I have young adult children, and I have,
mhm.
second graders. And so
Well,
I just, and it's not, sometimes people who have children, their whole identity is tied to being a mother. And we're approaching Mother's Day, and it's a big deal, and it's a great
yeah.
call. But I have so much joy for this call on my life. And people say, oh, I don't know how you do it, all those kids. And I said, they would have to be yours. They would
Mm.
have to be yours to understand that I'm not overwhelmed. You're probably overwhelmed watching me.
So
Where's the
all this time, I've been saying, where is the manual? There's no manual for moms, and you wrote a whole book.
I wrote a manual. And listen, you do the work. I don't do the work. I show you how. And it's
Mm.
called Mom's Manual. Life doesn't come with a manual, but it comes with a mom. Is that like,
I
right? You left
love
the
that.
hospital, they had no paperwork for you, right?
Yeah. I'm like,
They're
so you're
like,
just gonna trust me with this baby? Like even my driver's license took longer than the training I got.
exactly, exactly. So
Wow.
when I'm not with my children, and I'm blessed to, be able to move about the cabin many times without my children, you wouldn't even know I had so many children. So when I say, yeah, so you have children? Oh yeah, I have a few. 7. And I'm part of what we call the Heavenly Seven. My grandmother had is one of 7. So my great grandmother had 7. And I have this picture
Wow.
up in our home of my great grandmother, who has my grandmother as a little girl in the picture. And
Uh-huh.
who knew that I was going to be Heavenly Seven? I mean, I had some advanced maternal pregnancies. And so I did not see this coming, but the Lord clearly ordered my steps. And
Right.
I'm just excited to be here today.
So, oh my, you are exuding so much joy and just so much grace and poise. And I have to ask you, because you consider yourself the joyful mother, a lot of moms seem to be so stressed out, and we keep telling ourselves babies are blessings, children are blessings. but then they're experiencing the weight of their blessings.
Yeah.
What is the secret that you have that allows you to maintain this joy 7 kids later?
Woo, that's a great question, Ro. Um, Life is fleeing. You know,
Mm,
the Bible says, teach us to number our days. And about 8 years ago, we lost both of my husband's parents at the same time, and he's the only child. And that I was already excited and joyful and thrilled about the call of motherhood. But that really helped me understand the power of a legacy. It
mm,
reminded me, right? Just that the Lord, that we're just passing through. The Lord is calling us. This is not our home. And He gives us a short window. It seems like forever, right? It seems like when you have a onesie, right? And it's time to snap that onesie on the bottom and change those diapers. It's like, this is going to be forever, right?
yeah.
But you get to the other side and you learn that this is not forever, and that
Mm,
this is that God has called you for such a time as this, and that you need to make the best of where you are. And so
yeah.
one of the things I always said, I was on the podcast with Jenny Urich, and she was like, "What's your quote? What's your quote?" And I would say, fall in love with the season of your life,
Mm,
right? You have a season, and and the season is a gift. Ecclesiastics talks about the season,
yeah.
right? And there's a time for everything. And so one of the things that I do to really keep myself is that I don't compare myself out of seasons, right? Because when you begin, don't you love that mother? She's got a whole bunch of little kids, right? And I remember those days. And I was like, Lord, I'm gonna be sitting here till you come, because nobody wants to watch all these kids. I'm gonna be here. There's no place I gotta go. By the time I get somebody dressed, they've spilled something on themselves, and it's lunchtime again, and then it's dinner time. That's a season. And so if
Mm,
you want to find joy, enjoy the season that you're in. I nursed all 7 babies, and that season when you go from finishing nursing one and it's time to nurse another and you're pregnant. It seems like forever. But I think that the wisdom in it is that it's only for such a time as this
yeah.
that you've been called to do what you're doing and fall in love. So right now, Ro, I have a daughter who graduated in the pandemic. It's rough. It was rough during the pandemic. She graduated college in the pandemic and
Mm,
didn't get a graduation. Oh my gosh, she's still
oh.
mad at that. Okay. And that same year, I had another child who was 4 years apart who was graduating high school in the pandemic.
Mm,
So she was homeschooled, of course. So she got what we did in homeschooling, which was great. Well, here we are 4 years later. That kid who was finishing high school is graduating college in a couple of weeks.
wow.
Like, and I have another kid, because I was pregnant all the time, who's graduating high school. So here I am. And the Lord reminded me, He says, I restore you. I restore your soul. And so He
Mm,
reminded me, He says, here you are 4 years now. And now you're going to get to do something that you couldn't do 4 years ago. Praise me, right? Like, this is so exciting. So
yeah.
people are like, why are you so excited? I was like, I was excited then, I'm excited now, because life has seasons. And sometimes we're not even conscious of how the days are passing by, right? Until you look
Yeah.
back at a picture. I'm a
Mm,
photojournalist. My background is television and journalism. So I have a
okay.
picture of everything. And you look back and you say, man, I forgot all about that. And so
Mm,
that's my secret, just be in the season. So right now I'm in the college season. I have my fourth child, who's a son, my first boy, headed to college. And I have
congratulations.
thank you, my second daughter who's finishing up college, right?
Wow.
And I have another one who's in college. It's
Mm,
crazy. It's crazy. And then, but don't forget, I got my 2-year-old who just got her butterfly garden, and she's waiting for the butterflies to come out. We're waiting. So do you see it? It's like,
yeah.
So people are like, I don't know how you do it. I was like, they have to be your children.
Mm.
And if they're yours, you're not tired. You're just tired watching me.
That is such a beautiful response. And you dropped some nuggets, and I want you to go back to them because I don't want those to go over people's head. Like when you were talking about the seasons, one thing you mentioned is not comparing. And comparison is such a thief of joy, right? Like we're
Yeah.
looking to the left. Well, how does that mom do this? And we're looking over this, and why doesn't that mom have that?
Yeah.
How did you learn about the importance of not comparing?
Yeah. The word says be content. Be
Mhm.
content. Where you are, where you find yourself. Learn that perseverance. So no matter if you're having a good day or a bad day, just that this is just the seasons of how life is. And so really just not being in someone else's season,
Yeah.
trying to question God about a season that you're not in.
Mm.
Right? We're pushing God and we're asking him. And let me tell you something. He'll challenge you. Because when I was pregnant again, I was pregnant again, but then I was pregnant again and again. And he said, "Do you remember?" He said, "Do you remember how you were crying and asking me, begging me, pleading?"
Mm.
He said, "Do you remember? Well, you're pregnant again." I literally went in for a regular pap and pelvic exam, minding my own business, y'all. Minding my own business. They were like, "You're pregnant." I was like, "I didn't ask for a pregnancy test, but thank you." They're like, "Oh, we check everyone, honey." I was like, "Well, when you find the right blood mix, you let me know."
Wow.
And they're on the line laughing. She did this so many times, you know. And the Lord's reminding me, he's like, "Do you remember? Do you remember how much you yearn for this?" And so I went from I'm pregnant to I'm pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
really good. Oh my gosh.
we have to remember how the Lord has brought us so far. So
You said that word so many times, and my husband said to me, I think it was earlier last year, he said, "Bro, we need to start writing down things because the Lord literally commands us to remember." Like there's so many times in scripture where he said, "Did you not remember? Didn't
yeah.
I tell you to remember?" And it's like we go through these moments that feel like we're never going to get through, and we get through, and then we forget. And it's like, no, you need to have a flashback on those moments because that's what's going to help you get through the other season that you're in that feels impossible. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate how you talk about remembering and the piece about not belittling what God has done for us, right? So you're comparing and looking at someone else's season. He's like, stay in your lane. And
Yes.
that's what I tell my kids. Like sometimes my kids try to compare with each other, and I'm like, no, you're comparing with your past. I don't care what your brother's doing.
Right.
We're looking at what you did yesterday, and
That's right.
that's what you're, going against, not other people. So
That's right.
that piece about staying in your lane and falling in love with the season that you're in. It's so it's so profound and at the same time it's so tough, right? Because we're
Yes.
always looking to the next thing, but that's
Yes.
what keeps you stressed because you're never in the moment. So stay
Yes.
present. Thank
Yeah.
you for that.
You're
I
welcome.
love that. It just makes me think about this too shall pass,
Yes.
right? So, and good or bad, even the excitement that you're in, this too shall pass because something else is going to happen. So
Yeah.
just savor every single moment. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yes.
So tell me, how did the homeschooling journey start? Are you one of those people who, the minute you had your first kid, you're like, I'm homeschooling, or were you like kicking and screaming, God is dragging you?
Well, I'm more of the reluctant homeschooler, so I'm closer to the kicking and screaming. My grandmother was so focused on education that my mom graduated at 16 years old. Speaking Hebrew, right? They're in
Okay,
North New Jersey at Weequahic High School, right near you. And so education was a big part of our family. And so just like most Black Americans, it doesn't include homeschooling. And most of us have never heard of homeschooling.
right.
Like, what's homeschooling, right?
Yeah,
So when we had the kids in private Christian school, and it was a situation over a grade. I just knew that it was time for a change. I just didn't know what it was going to be, and I was willing to just look at all of my options. And the Lord said, "You're going to homeschool." I was like, "Homeschool? What does that mean?" And
wow.
my husband said, "Is this legal? Like, don't have the police at my door." And that's where I connected with HSLDA. That's my story.
Okay,
Because he was like, don't have the police at my door. I said, honey,
right.
you are the police. 33 years, major narcotics detective. Yes, he's the police. He says, well, don't have my coworkers at my door. Talking to the girl at the park, talking about you're going to take the kids out of school and you got the police at the door, right? And that's how it started. That's how I fell in love
Yeah,
with HSLDA. My story, we talked before we went live about how you connect with HSLDA. I needed to know all the details. Well,
yeah,
for me, my husband needed to know all the details because we went from spending $20,000 in private education to $500 in books. He kept saying, is this legal? The kids look happy. The bus is going down the street. Like, what am I missing? What's the downside to this? And so I
right,
think I set out as a reluctant homeschooler trying to appease my mom, right? Because she said, you're homeschooling my grandchildren. That was code word to it better be good.
right,
It better be
right.
better than what you were doing,
I'm
right?
watching
Why were you
you.
doing this? Exactly. When you got to answer to your mama. And So I had that going on one side of me. Then I had my husband going on the other side. Is this legal? Are you sure? And so you don't start out knowing, here I am almost 20 years later. You don't start out knowing that you're going to do it as long as you're going to do it. You have to
Mm,
take 1 year at a time, one situation at a time, one season at a time, one semester at a time, one curriculum at a time. And the Lord will show you. So I always say, go as far as you can see. When you get there, you'll see more. And
mm.
so here I was. And so my first daughter, it had to be good. Remember, I was in trouble with my mom. And I said, you're going to be a doctor and a lawyer, right? She was a junior Olympic gymnast at the time, training on a very high level of gymnastics. And we started homeschooling, and all I knew was this better be good. So I thought she better get in a dual enrollment program. I said, if she gets an associate degree and a high school diploma at the same time, that should suffice. Like everybody should be okay with that,
Right.
right?
I
And
know.
so anyway, it didn't turn out that way. She didn't finish her associate degree, but she did take enough classes to have had the max amount of classes that she could take to transfer into her 4-year university. So the dean says, who's this kid that shows up with half my classes done? Right?
Oh,
It's the homeschool kid. You gotta love it. So
yay.
that's how it started. And of course, it will give you hope for those who are watching that we calmed down by kid number 2. We didn't do any dual enrollment classes with her, and she's the one who's graduating. I mean, Dean's List, magna cum laude, just, took those entry level classes, it's great, So my oldest daughter was in political science, and my second daughter was in environmental science. Now, Ro, we own a family beach. And so when she said that she was doing environmental science, I was like, aren't we already the environmentalists? Like, do we need a degree in that? I'll be honest. My husband's like, hun, let her do what she loves doing. And she loves it. So we call her our environmental ambassador for
Okay.
Taylor's Beach. We're featured on the African American Museum, and we own a family-owned beach. It's in Virginia. We've been baptizing people on our beach for over 52 years. It's the best kept
Oh,
secret. And
oh
and
my
it's
gosh.
Mari is literally like 1 week away from officially having her degree in environmental studies. And it was her passion just because of her experience um, on Taylor's Beach. And so, I mean, like literally, we did our biology on the beach. This is like that kid,
Oh my gosh. I
She said,
love
Mom, I'm
it.
gonna, I'm gonna test the water. I'm gonna test to see what the water, I want to know what's going on. I want to put it in the microscope. So, so homeschooling was a way that every year the Lord showed me more and more and more and more
Mhm.
and more. And we've been serving at our church now for about 13 years because my kids wanted to be connected to their community. They were like, we want to be around other homeschoolers. And I was like, well, I had background in leadership. I said, well, we can help a few families and do this together. And here I am, and we love it. But so we're traditional, kind of classical co-op. But then once it's over, we're so eclectic. I mean, like we change topics every other day. It's like, what's going on? What? There's a tornado coming? Let's study it. Just you know. So
Yeah.
so I'm all over. Like I told you, now we got the butterfly net. We were doing flying creatures, but we have our curriculum, but we decided to buy some caterpillars, you know.
Yeah.
And my little daughter, she loves, that's our future vet. So we decided to get a puppy. And then we had 2
Mm.
puppies. And then we had 7 puppies. So who gets the boy and the girl puppy? It changes. So there's days where it's animal science and there's no other science going on because that, my friend, is animal science.
I hear
We're
you.
done.
Right. Check.
Check.
Oh my gosh. You said
So
there's, yeah, go ahead.
just it's an organic thing, right? So you
Mm.
start and you're like, I'm reluctant. And so if you're watching and you're reluctant, you're about right. And then you go, and I love how you said you visit some of the state orgs. We have conventions, and then all of a sudden you get exposed to learning another way of how you can fall in love with education.
Hmm.
Number one thing homeschool people do is we collect books, don't we?
We sure do.
We like
We
books.
sure do. That is so impressive. Like you are a poster child for like homeschooling and really doing the interest led and the organic and really like making it come alive versus we have to talk about this because it's happening. I remember when the solar eclipse happened, I was in Ohio. with my boys, and my in-laws had 100% totality. I'm like, science check. Like
Yes,
this, we're done, right?
we're none.
But versus, oh, we can't go watch the clips. You have to finish the curriculum. No, this is what's happening in real life. Let's go check it out.
Yes, yes.
I
So
love
true.
that. So you said how, in the beginning, your mom, it's not that she wasn't on board, but because it was new, she was curious and she wanted to see, what was going on. And your husband is also giving you the side eye, like, what are you doing? Like, why are we doing this? Can we even do this? Right? What would you say to the person who either is on the fence because there's so much peer pressure, so many voices whispered in their head,
Yeah.
why are you doing this? Are you sure you're supposed to be doing it? Or the person who's in the trenches doing it right now and they're still not getting the support from well-meaning family members. Like,
Yeah.
what would you say to that person?
Oh, that's so my life. It's all of our lives. I mean, we would go down to Taylor's Beach and we're very eclectic. And at the time, his grandmother was alive, which was the kid's great grandmother. And I would have other family members who would show up and say, shouldn't the kids be in school? Like, what's going on? Is this homeschooling? And so I started giving it titles and I was like, yeah, this is history. They're talking with their great grandmother.
I
And
love that.
then someone else was, my other daughter, LaNissir, she was planting her strawberries. And they're like, is this homeschooling? What is she out? She's just working in the garden? I said, yes, this is botany. This is botany. And then my son, who wanted to restore his grandmother's beach house, and he started working with his hands and working with woodwork. And I said, yeah, this is construction management one. And then they would come the next year. He's still working on this? Yes, this is construction management too. Right. And then my daughter who's painting, she's loved, so my son, by the way, he's getting a bachelor's degree in business administration, project management, and also technical studies. He leaves for Liberty University in August. So we're excited for him. And that was the kid who 4 years ago eclectically was just hanging out at his great grandmother's.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what I would say to that person who, they're hearing from people who are well-meaning, they're just
Yeah.
concerned that you really have to spend some quiet time with the Lord. You are mama and right? Or dad, what the Lord is asking you to do with your child. And it's your responsibility to do it, right? And
Mhm.
so and it's going to look different, than what, again, we don't have a bunch of people on our street who are homeschooling. And so you also have to be willing to swim alone
Ooh.
and get connected to what the Lord will have you to do. And, if you just have mustard seed faith, you're like, you know what, I'm going to close this book today and we're going to work on character development, or we're going to get outside, the weather is nice, or we're going to take a field trip. You'll get a chance to see God's plan because you don't always see it in front of you, right? You're thinking, I've been working on the same math problem over and over. It's not working, right? Because you want instant results. That's
It
not how it works.
microwave generation. Yep.
It doesn't work that way. I remember my son, Leo, he was like, Ma, I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't understand how a half is bigger than a fourth because four is bigger than two. And I'm
Right.
like, okay, okay. The pizza was getting ready to come. I said, could you double cut the pizza? And so then I said, Leo, did you want half the pizza or fourth of the pizza? He's eating now. He's like, I got it, Mom. I got it. A half is bigger than the fourth. It's bigger than the fourth. So education happens, right? It doesn't
Mm.
have to be in this formal setting. It's just happening. And I am so grateful. Unlike when I had, my mom had to work and she was a single mom, and I didn't really understand I didn't learn my character base from her because she was gone. But the kids get a chance to see us, to see us in our most vulnerable state. They see how you get up in the morning, how you go to sleep, how you
Yeah.
organize your day, how you deal with conflict, and they're watching. And the Lord is just using you to really make an influence, a
Mm.
positive, instead of these, people who are well-meaning, very, very well qualified, but they're not mom and dad. They
Right.
don't know your legacy. And I was at my end of the year program at our church, and I said, the two distinctions about homeschooling is this: you get to keep Christ in your curriculum if you choose, and that's a big deal. And the
Mhm.
second is parents, parental rights,
Mhm.
that you begin, because in the traditional school, we lock the parents out.
Yeah.
Well, in homeschooling, we lock parents in. Right? We have a parent-led co-op. It's like, No, your kid can't come unless you're coming. Isn't that great?
Right, right.
So those are this distinction. So I hope I answered your question, but I love home education, and my sweet spot in home education is high school. And I've been serving as the high school specialist with HSLDA for a long time now, about 5 years. And I work with my church with high school. So I love helping kids launch, right? I love
Mm.
to hit that fear base because see, we all think we're smarter than a fifth grader, right? Ooh, but let that high school roll around. People start having second thoughts. They're like, I didn't do so well in biology and chemistry is not my thing, right?
Mm.
And you start thinking about you can't and you can't. And so I love to kind of open up possibilities of how education can work on the high school level. That's like my sweet spot. I love to hang out there.
I hear you. And you definitely answered the question because you took us back to God. You're like, listen, you have to go and make sure that you heard what you heard and make sure that you get clarity on what you heard. And like you said, you do what you can for as far as you can see. And then when you get there, you'll see much further. I
Yes.
remember in 2008, I thought I heard God clearly say something to me. And I said to someone, hey, just wanted to let you know you're not going to see me for a while because I'm moving to China. And he said, oh, I don't think that's God's will. And me with my little sassy self, I said to him, well, when God called me, it was in a three-way. He called me. He just called me.
Not
Fast forward
calling
that
in a
person.
three-way. That's right, Ro. That's right. We're spending too much time trying to sell others on the assignment that the Lord gave.
Conference call. Mhm.
Yeah, I love that. That's good. That's a
What
good
I
one.
will tell you though is that person who told me that it wasn't God's will was not my husband. So
Right.
maybe
Right.
he had it, his own little thing there. But I share that because it's the same thing when I started homeschooling. Like there's some things, I'm telling you, there's some things in my life where I'm like, I'm not really sure. I think God wants me to take this job. I think, I'm not sure. Those two things, move to China, homeschool my kids, crystal clear. There would like if I told you that I think I'm lying. Like I was so clear about what he said, right? So I think sometimes it's about shutting out those voices,
Yeah.
shutting out Google, because like I said, I like to do that research, at 2 o'clock in the morning and like find out all the things. But sometimes it's about shutting out all those voices and saying, God, what are you saying? What do you want
Yes.
from me? Because I'm overwhelmed by all the different opinions. I'm overwhelmed by the overwhelming opinion that sounds different from what you said. But what are
Yeah.
you saying?
That's good. That's good stuff, friend.
And the other thing you said that I really loved was how you make homeschooling practical. So I remember hating history. Every single thing I did, I got an A in it because I knew how to study, I knew how to cram, I knew how to get that A. But then the information would leave my brain when it was no longer necessary, and because I didn't want it. I wasn't interested in it. But then when I started teaching the boys, I said, well, instead of flipping the pages about Abraham Lincoln, can I just go to Lincoln Park right here in Jersey City and show them,
Yeah.
the actual monument? Can we go over across to Pennsylvania and show them George Washington's crossing and like reenact the whole thing?
Yeah.
And the conversations on the way back, as we're like reading a book, a living book, where they're kind of like going through George Washington's socks, or they're going through what happened in history. The kind of questions they ask, I'm like, they're blowing my mind. These little
Yeah.
9 and 7-year-old boys, the questions they ask are so profound. And it's because I'm not saying in 1789, George Washington became the first president. It's like we're actually living it. So I
Yes.
love how you talked about the practical piece of the pizza, right? Like do the
Yes.
fun fractions real quick. With my middle guy, I'll say, I'll ask him a math question and he'll give me an answer. And I'll say, if you have $5, the minute I say dollars, he gets it. His math, his math skills get so sharp. You say dollars or Legos or something that he's interested in, and
Right.
it literally turns everything around. So
I
thank
love
you for
that.
sharing that piece.
I love that. Yeah, and we're
Well,
road schoolers, so we like to be out and about like part of our time. We have a 33-foot RV, and so we're known to be out on the road. It sleeps 10, so everybody can go. And
Wow.
of course, for people who are not familiar, there are the junior ranger programs that you can go to at all of the, the national parks. And there's so many ways to learn out and about. And isn't it true that when you take a field trip, you can learn about, Abraham Lincoln, but when you go to, one of his monuments, of course, we're here in the Washington, D.C. area, it just comes alive,
It
and
does.
and when it's time to come back to, to read a book about it, the interest is there, right? And all of a
Hmm.
sudden, kids get engaged in things that they think that they weren't interested in. So that's just so much fun. And that's
Yeah.
the beauty of homeschool freedom. It's just being able to, curate your homeschool journey. And it's exciting and it's different for everyone. And that's what's nice about it.
Yes, it is. And I'm also redeeming my own education. There are things that, like I told you, I learned it, but I didn't really care about it, so I forgot it. And now I'm like putting the pieces together. I saw this t-shirt that says, "Don't let me repeat myself, history." Right? And it's like you start to repeat those mistakes because you don't know that it happened before, right?
Right,
Um,
right.
but in that redeeming the education, I always thought the homeschooling journey was me being home with my kids, loving on them, and teaching them. I didn't realize it was a part of the curriculum for me.
Oh,
There
yeah.
is so much character and spiritual development. I'm like, God, I did not sign up for this. Like
Yeah.
patience, I didn't ask you for this, you know?
Yes.
I'm the kind of person who I'm like, I'm not gonna pray for this because God doesn't just download it. He puts me in the position so that I can have to learn through it. I'm like, no, Holy Spirit, activate. That's what I want. I say all that to say, what are some of the things that you've had to learn or unlearn about yourself because of this journey?
Yeah, so much. I love what you're saying in that you learn alongside of your children. I think parents, when they first start homeschooling, they're not conscious of how participatory the experience is going to be. Because I think when you're in traditional school, you're just trying to teach a test, right? You're just trying to
Yes.
help your kid get the answer and, come on, come on, come on, let's get this project done. But when you're homeschooling, you're coming alongside because your kid sees how much of what you're teaching you
Mm.
learn, right? And so I too have had to relook at some of the mistakes maybe that I've made in my own educational journey, right? That I really want to help my kids do better,
Hmm.
and I mean, there's countless things. One of the things that I think about is reading comprehension,
Hmm.
and I could throw out a curriculum that one of them that I love. And in reading comprehension, I would skim books. I wouldn't really read them when I was coming up, right? We had Cliff Notes, right? We read the Cliff Notes and right? And of course you don't want your kids to do that. You want them to read it. You want them to get every aspect of it. And it's so funny is because now we're using this curriculum that allows us to have a discussion of each of the novels that we're
Hmm.
reading. And so now I have a play by play, chapter by chapter. I know if you read it, if you didn't read it, I can help you with your reading comprehension.
Yeah.
But yet the Lord keeps you really in a humble space because they're like, "LaNissir, that's not what you did. You crammed."
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And your kid is now reading, right? You know?
Yes.
So, it's a humbling to kind of come and but then to say to your kid in a very vulnerable way, I understand why you want to skip chapters. I understand why you're not interested. And having the homeschool freedom to turn the page and take a different look at that material. We just
Mhm.
recently saw Prince Caspian at the Museum of the Bible. And
Oh,
and where I was trying to get these kids to, I was like, you guys are gonna love the Chronicles of Narnia, and and they're like, not. And I was like, oh God, but of course, then they come back from, Prince Caspian, they're like, we love the Chronicles of Narnia. And oh my gosh, and so now it's a whole, but you see, it's just that little change, it's a
mhm.
paradigm switch, if you will, where education happens on a whole new level if mom and dad are willing to be humble,
Right.
and
And
vulnerable in the way that
vulnerable.
they teach. Yeah. Same
Mhm.
thing. I'll tell you another story. I hated chemistry coming up, right? And so we got this great curriculum on chemistry. And we learned about, this song where you learn all the elements and how we were coloring the pages. I mean, I was teaching 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds chemistry, and they were reading and singing the periodic table. That was not what I was doing in chemistry,
Right.
right? And even some of my other older students, they were like, "Okay, we didn't have that kind of love, right?"
Yeah.
They're like, I got the alkaline metals, I got the noble gases. They were so excited. And so I think that when parents sit back, relax, and ask God for help, and new ways of how to tackle a curriculum that might have been, or subject that might have been hard
Mhm.
for us. He will show you. He will show you ways, and you'll be learning all over again. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. And when people told me that you get to redeem your education or you'll learn alongside them, I always thought it meant, okay, we'll learn together this history sentence or whatever. I didn't realize I was learning about myself. So like
Yeah.
all the times when I had like any kind of struggles with math with my sons, I always thought, God, what's going on? Like math comes like this to me. Why is it not coming like that to him? I didn't realize it was me. It was the patience and me not holding to the philosophy if a child doesn't learn how you teach and you have to teach the way that they learn. And I'm like, wait, so this is a me thing? It's them. I know this, right? But
It's
like you said, it's humbling. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be transparent and say, okay, maybe I didn't teach that so well, or maybe I didn't do this, or, maybe I need to freshen up on something versus why aren't you getting it? And that's a pride thing of I'm a good teacher, so
right.
why aren't you getting it? It has to be a you thing. So it has been very humbling to see like my flaws and like where God is still working on me. And I'm like, God, you're tricky, tricky. That's not what I
Yeah.
asked for.
Well, I was gonna have to teach them. He's like, no, I'm gonna teach you.
There you
So that
go.
you can teach them.
There you go. He's like, no, this is about you. This is
Yeah.
about you not being patient. I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Because in my head, I'd be like, well, how many times do I have to say it? How many times do I have to tell you this? And he's like, well, how many times did I tell you to forgive? 70 times seven. So do it to say it as many times as you need to.
There you go. I love
Yeah,
that. I love that.
it's interesting. Oh my gosh, I can hold you here forever. It's so refreshing to talk to you. And because you have this perspective with like your 8-year-old all the way up to like your 26-year-old, you're repeating things and you're seeing things in different lights because I'm sure like the first one and the first one is experiment, right? So
Yeah,
like I'm
we're
sure you're
practicing. We're all practicing on that firstborn. Poor firstborn. We love you, firstborns.
love you.
You
Love
didn't
you.
know.
Thank you.
Yes.
But you have such a wealth of knowledge and so many different perspectives. So I could hold you here forever. But we're all mamas, and until I get that manual, I need to, just release you. What are your final thoughts? What do you wish that everyone knew, or what is something that you wish you knew, or just like an open-ended question? What else would you like to share?
Yeah. Move at the speed of life.
Oh,
Move at the speed of life. I've said this before and I say it again, that God has given you a life that he wants you to live, and you have to move at that speed.
mm,
That's not the speed of your neighbors, not the speed of your cousin or your brother or your mom. It's your speed. Like we're getting ready to take a cruise with my grandmother who's 91.
yay.
If the Lord says the same, right? But it's the speed, right? And I told the kids, I said, yeah, we're
Mm,
all going. My mom's going, my grandmother's going, but we're moving at the speed of life and how the Lord has given it to us for such a time as this. And so we're
mm,
ripping and running. I mean, like we're not coming, right? Grandma's 91 and she's excited about going. And that's the speed of life that we're going to live on, right?
well,
And be joyful about it, right? Praise ye the Lord. He maketh the barren woman to keep house, to be a joyful mother of children. Praise ye the Lord. And so just understand that where you are in the season, maybe you're waiting for children, maybe you already have children, maybe they're young children, maybe they're middle school, they're high school, wherever they are, they're young adults. No matter where they are, that's the season that the Lord has you in. And so move at that speed. Fall in love
mm,
with that speed. Don't worry about the speed that you're not in. Don't waste time daydreaming about when all the kids leave, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That could get depressing, right? Oh, when I get. So I hide out in the bathroom. I'm gonna tell you this last story. I hide out in the bathroom because that's the only place where people don't come in looking for me. And I figured out, listen to this, Ro. Here's a tip for you. I know you got your young kids at home. If you leave the light off, you'll get at least an extra 15 minutes because it'll take them a while to find you. They'll walk around. Have you seen mommy? Have you seen mommy? They'll walk right by daddy. Have you seen mommy? Have you seen mommy? Like they could ask the question to daddy. No, no, no.
Right.
They're looking for mommy. And they'll walk by and finally they're like, she's gotta be under there. I've looked everywhere. And you have gained 15 minutes. So sit quietly, keep the light off, and there, my friend, is your free time. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. That is so funny. You know, the last thing I'll say is that you shared so much, and I don't know if you saw me looking down, but I've taken like so many notes because you said so many good things that I need to apply. But one thing you kept doing is pointing us back to Christ. And it's interesting that so many Christians homeschool because they want to have Christ in the curriculum. And for some, that translates to, okay, we're going to do devotion. Now we're going to do everything else. For some, that literally means we're going to put God in the center of everything. But when you kept pointing me back to Christ, what I was realizing is there's sometimes that we're trying to do things in our own strength. And there's sometimes that it's hard because we push Christ out. We're like, God, we did devotion already. Let me handle this thing, right? Let me handle this math problem. Let me handle this chemistry piece instead of saying, God, I need you in every season. I need you in every moment. I need you in every subject. So thank you so, so much for pointing us back to the one who gives us strength or source or help. So
Yes,
you're
yes.
amazing. Thank
Thank
you.
you. God is to be glorified. And I tell you, if you will keep him first in your homeschooling, like you said, um, it's amazing what can happen. In fact, you have no idea. Eyes have not seen or ears have not heard what can happen when you fall in
Mm.
love with having Christ in the middle of what you do and building your legacy around that. I really just wanted my kids to be able to be lovers of Christ, to see how I, handle and the good, the bad, and the ugly. But
Mm.
most importantly, for them to get a hold of the Lord for themselves. And I think that's so important.
Amen. Thank you.
You're
It's so,
welcome. I can't wait to see you again. Thank you for having me on your show and your podcast. This is great.
it has been my ultimate pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and bye for now.